After all of the craziness and repeated game delays we experienced after the pandemic hit in 2020, I think a lot of us were expecting E3 2021 to be this massive explosion of announcements and promising updates on upcoming games, especially after many studios were given time to polish their games out while working predominantly from home. To some extent, that's what happened, but for the most part, I think most would agree that E3 2021 was a very underwhelming show overall. A lot of the companies that held press conferences didn't have much to show off, and some just straight up didn't talk about video games. But I'm not here to focus on the negative today. I always like to talk about what excited me at E3, and the same goes for this year too. Given that there were few games of actual interest to me though, it was tough for me to even assemble a top 10 list. Some of these games were ones that actually interest me enough to compel a day one purchase, and the rest are ones that I would probably like to play at some point, but would prefer for word of mouth to spread before making a final decision. Without further ado though, let's get into it, shall we?
Number 10.
Right now, there are two types of Marvel video games. There's Insomniac's very solid Spider-Man titles, and then the games most people couldn't care less about. Given that Guardians of the Galaxy is being given to us by Square Enix, the publisher of last year's commercially and critically disappointing Avengers game, I fear that this game could fall into that latter category. Even so, since I think this team of superheroes is among the most interesting ensembles of characters in the MCU, I am hopeful that this game can capture similar magic with its gameplay and storytelling. After all, this is an entirely single-player focused game as opposed to the live service crap that Square Enix pushed with Avengers, so that's already something to be excited about. Here's to hoping we get a better trailer after a while, because while the demo showed off some interesting ideas, the combat encounters and level design were lackluster at best.
Number 9.
This one is tough for me because I strongly prefer single-player games to multiplayer-focused ones. If I do play a multiplayer game, I really have to love the mechanics and feel proficient enough with the game to be motivated to invest hours of my time. On top of that, I haven't played a Battlefield game competitively since Battlefield 1943 on the Xbox 360, so part of me is anxious that I would be that annoying guy who makes things worse for the team that gets stuck with. That being said, Battlefield 2042 looks freaking ridiculous, and I wouldn't be surprised if this obnoxiously action-packed trailer isn't that far off from how multiplayer matches would actually play out. Who knows, I'll probably wait for the reviews and then see if I want to dip my toes in this community. Plus, there's the question as to whether EA will screw the pooch with its launch. One can never be too careful with that company.
Number 8.
And just like with the game I mentioned seconds ago, here we have another multiplayer title. On top of that, it's being released by a different company you have to stay on your toes with. However, what makes Riders Republic special is its concept for madcap multiplayer fun. Essentially, if you turned the X Games into an MMO, that's pretty much what we're promised to get here. There's mountain biking, skiing, snowboarding, base jumping, and apparently quote-unquote rocket wingsuiting, and all of it is competitive. Thankfully, the game doesn't seem to be leaning heavily into realism, rather taking an approach with its controls and art style to really emphasize the goofy fun that the game seems to be promising. And that's all I would hope for from this game. Just make it fun, and keep the energy going from one match to the next. If Riders Republic turns out well, it could signal a comeback for arcade sports games in an increasingly battle royale and FPS obsessed world. It'll remain to be seen if this will be the game that brings people back in though.
Number 7.
I feel like 12 minutes is tailor-made for the kind of gaming experience that my wife and I like to go through together. I don't know how I feel about having to play a game centered around a time loop from a top-down perspective the entire time, for that seems like it could get old depending on how long the game is meant to last. Still, I like games that take advantage of their interactive nature to tell a story, kind of like What Remains of Edith Finch. Given that this game presents some cross between a gritty investigative mystery and Groundhog Day, on top of having a cast rounded out by James McAvoy, Daisy Ridley, and Willem Dafoe, color me intrigued.
Number 6.
I love me some good 3D platformers, and Psychonauts 2 looks like it's going to be exactly that. So far, 2021 has been a year of me being reminded of things I've missed out on, and therefore need to catch up with. That's my relationship with Psychonauts 2, because the original game was one I unfortunately missed. But thankfully now that we know that it's being released at the end of August, I have the perfect motivation to finally get around to it. After all, this game seems to have been shaped into the kooky, creative, and diverse type of platformer it was advertised as from its inception on Kickstarter. If Psychonauts 2 is anywhere near as inventive as everyone says the original is, I can only hope that this will be one of the most unique and enjoyable games of the year.
Number 5.
And just like with the game I talked about a second ago, Elden Ring is another reminder of things I need to catch up on. In this case, I have yet to play a title by From Software, even though I have copies of both Bloodborne and Sekiro on my shelf. As one who really enjoys tough, exploration-focused adventure games though, the idea of Elden Ring is very intriguing to me, with its source of inspiration being dark medieval fantasy, on top of Game of Thrones author George R.R. Martin being involved with the story. I can only imagine that the epic trailer we got is but a meager taste of the wondrous world From Software has in store for us. But beyond that, the game just looks immensely entertaining. It's a completely open sandbox with a whole ton of macabre monsters waiting to crush you to pieces, and frankly, that sounds like a lot of fun to me. I'm no masochist, I just like a good hearty challenge with a dose of adrenaline. And if that's what Elden Ring will give its players this January, then I'll be there to experience it.
Number 4.
If you tell me that a game is entirely built around the concept of co-op, that is usually an immediate turnoff for me. But if you tell me that a game built around the concept of co-op is being made by the guys who did Left 4 Dead,
You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
since Back 4 Blood is basically just an unofficial Left 4 Dead 3, I am all on board with trying out this game when it releases in October. What concerns me about the game though, to be quite honest with you, is that there seems to be a greater emphasis on storytelling than the Left 4 Dead games did. This newest trailer showed fully rendered cutscenes with cheesy one-liners and cliched conversations, which could be to the game's benefit, but tone is a very easy thing to mess up, so that does worry me as far as the campaign goes. I wish them luck, but the story could fail hard. Still, in terms of core gameplay, if the people at Turtle Rock can recapture even half of the fun factor of Left 4 Dead 2, this will be worth everyone's time. Back 4 Blood does indeed look like a ton of gory fun, so I'm hoping for the best with this one.
Number 3.
Look, I was gonna be excited for this game no matter what Nintendo showed off. Breath of the Wild is my favorite video game of all time, so that should tell you everything you need to know about my excitement for its sequel. However, I felt kinda weird about this new trailer that was shown during the Direct. It certainly looks like it retains the core mechanics, world, and art style of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is what I wanted, but I think the surprise hype and allure of that original trailer diminished in the 2-year radio silence since June 2019. Despite seeing all of these cool new glimpses into its gameplay and potential story, it just didn't quite grip me as much as I hoped. I suppose I was just hoping for a little bit more context into what was going on instead of a mostly vague teaser. Even so, I eagerly await the day when I can play it in 2022. These guys delivered one of the greatest games of all time back in 2017, and ushered in an era of prosperity for Nintendo. As such, I have faith that this will continue the tradition of 3D Zelda games being the pinnacle of Nintendo quality.
Number 2.
I gave up any and all hope for the story of Halo Infinite a while ago, but as a lifelong fan of this series, I'm willing to give it a shot, especially since 343 has come to understand more about what the Halo community likes these past few years. I'm doing a monthly review marathon anyway, so I kinda need to stick with it. The multiplayer though? Halo will always be special to me, not only because of the great sci-fi universe that Bungie cultivated, but because its multiplayer is just the best thing ever. So many friendship-defining memories were forged in the heat of battle, and as such, my group of friends takes the quality of Halo multiplayer very seriously. 343 has been doing damage control in that department ever since Halo 4 came out in 2012, but if I have not been deceived, the insane PvP combat shown off at this year's E3 is an indication that this company has finally nailed what the fans have been begging for. The acting male himself describes why in much better ways than I ever could, but with this one epic trailer, I'm more excited than ever before to play a Halo game. The multiplayer will be free to play, the economy seems to have been engineered in a consumer-friendly manner, the new mechanics look ridiculously fun, and split screen will be back. I mean, it's a done deal right there, man. Holiday 2021 can't come soon enough. Yes! Let's freaking go! I feel like Nintendo always has the big reveal that blows everyone's minds each year. This year, it's Metroid Dread. I say this because it's not only the first truly new 2D game we've gotten in this series since 2002's Metroid Fusion, but this game also happens to be that 2D Metroid game. You know, the one that was rumored for years before being declared dead by Nintendo, only to be confirmed as resurrected from the dead without any prior warning. That is exactly how you get people hyped for a franchise long considered to be dead. Nonetheless, it is one thing entirely to get people excited on a names-only basis, for there is still the question as to whether the game itself will be a quality product. From what we were shown anyway, Metroid Dread absolutely looks like it's going to shape up to be a great game. The core design philosophies are there, it was highly appraised by series creator Yoshio Sakamoto, the new gameplay elements look like refreshing ways to refine issues with previous games, and may I just say that I love the added horror element to the game. Obviously sci-fi horror, specifically Ridley Scott's Alien, has always been a major influence on these games, but Metroid Dread seems to be taking that even further with the concept of having to hide from the virtually indestructible Emmy robot. It seems like this game is set to balance tight, frenetic action with suspenseful moments of stealth, and I cannot wait to see how that pans out. And did I mention that the game comes out in October? This impressed and excited me more than any other game shown at this year's E3, and it is a promise to you that I will buy this day one, play it to completion, and review it here on the channel. Mark my words. Anyway, that's what I thought of the games shown off at E3 2021, at least the ones that stood out to me personally. What were your favorite games shown at the various presentations? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you liked what you saw here, please consider subscribing to the channel, as well as joining the notification squadron so that you don't miss out on my future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great one.